Today's album comes from a band with all kinds of complicated twists and turns throughout their lives. To start, there's Tom Wilson, the lead singer slash backup guitarist. This frontman grew up being told that his mother was his cousin and didn't learn about his Mohawk heritage until about the mid-2010s. He wrote a book about it recently. I'll link it down below if you want to check it out. On to Colin Cripps, an early mentor for this band. He actually joined for just this album after his band Crash Vegas broke up. It was a moderately successful Canadian rock band, but he's jumped around since from band to band, most recently playing with the legendary Canadian country rock band Blue Rodeo. This is also Grant Marshall's first appearance on bass, as he replaces their longtime bassist Russ Wilson. Not related to Tom at all, just had the same last name. Then there's the lead guitarist slash co-owner of the studio where this album was recorded, Dan Akin. An interesting little tidbit about Dan is he was Feist's uncle, and she also recorded some music at the same studio. I said was because in 2010, Dan tragically passed away of a heart attack in the most Canadian way possible, playing ice hockey. Thankfully, their drummer likes to keep things simple, and we don't have to get into him at all, so without further ado, I'll finally show you what we're dealing with. This is Junkhouse's third and final album, Fuzz. Released in 1997 through Columbia Records, straight out of Ontario, Canada. When it first came out, I was simply too young to process any of the kind of emotions and styles that were represented on this. So when I picked it up, I had completely forgotten who Junkhouse even was. And after only a few listens, I can't help but wish the band took another swing with this brand new lineup, because this is just so full of solid ideas and great recording techniques, but ultimately falls short of being one of those super memorable classic Canadian rock albums that you just must have. I hope that's not asking too much. I consider it a compliment coming from me, someone who has got almost too much ADHD to give most alt-rock a solid try. Alt-rock almost seems too cheap of a description. Maybe funky, jazz-inspired country rock? Tom Wilson's vocal delivery borderlines on grunge at a lot of points in this one, and at this point I've held on to this too long, and I'm just going to get right into the tracks. Setting up the stage with understated vocals and clean guitar inflections, the first track's called Number One Joyride. While many of the tracks on this album take inspiration from its American counterparts, this song in particular sets the tone for a distinctly Canadian-sounding album. On to Pearly White. This was Junkhouse's greatest hit according to the charts. It's a western-flavored rock track with a gruff, grungy attitude. With fun sitar and twangy guitar combinations, this one's memorable, but I really couldn't tell you what it's about. On to Funhouse 69, a punkier, super solid hard rock track with some cool transitions and progressions that keep this one interesting and keep it from being a generic mismatch of ideas rather than the ownership the band takes over this rockin' jam. Fun, somewhat raunchy lyrics and a great guitar solo make this one you'd never want to skip. Super Scar has punk lyrics like I don't want to be like you, but somehow the way it's mixed or recorded makes it have way less grip than I know these guys are capable of producing. I'm certain, and pretty heartbroken, that this song would have definitely been better live. Oh, hi there. Oh, hello. Oh, hello. Oh, I love you. I love you. There's a different kind of fuzz than the album we're talking about. You got a different kind of fuzz than the album. They got sad fuzz. You got the happiest fuzz in the world. Oh, yeah. Moving on to the title track. It's a slower, masterfully engineered grunge track. It perfectly balances these close-up, blemished guitars with the well-written and well-performed vocals. I really wish they had recorded and mixed the previous track Super Scar like this, because it's just so intimate. Regardless, this one's powerfully depressing, and if it had not been for grunge being completely wiped off the popular soundscape, I feel like this one would have had a lot better longevity. The album as a whole would have had better longevity, I think. But one thing I do have to mention about this track is the weird synth outro that's pretty relaxing, but comes out of left field and is totally unnecessary, really. All that I have to say about the next track, Jet Trash, is that I hope that it's ironic, otherwise I totally regret reviewing this entire album. No thank you. The dopest bass line on the album gets things back into gear on the cut Flood. Super reminiscent of the intro track off of Massive Attack's Blue Lines, Safe from Harm. This one combines that sound with something you might hear off of Beck's Odelay. I'm thinking Hot Wax, with this lo-fi, shouted vocal hook that's so grabby and so catchy that rips right in whenever it's time for it. It ends with a slick dual guitar outro that seems to last forever. I don't really have any idea how this one wasn't a big hit at the time. I gotta wait for this wind for a sec. Why am I breaking up? The Odelay vibes continue on the track Shovel. It's a cymbal-heavy rock groove, and I really like the guitars on this one as well, despite its all-encompassing name, Boom. The second to last track is the band just trying to fill too many different genres. With the familiar grunge punk lyrical delivery, they stretch to put this on top of a classic rock instrumental with a terribly uninspired chorus delivery. This one gets boring really quick. Ending off with what feels like it must have been a Radiohead-inspired song. This one's called Shine. It's somber, softer, and cruises steadily, but for maybe a little bit too long actually. The only track that I could actually find the lyrics for online, so I can take a swing at what I might think they're about. It's certainly one that could be dissected differently depending on your perspective, but for me, I think it's trying to say that fame is something that turns people into hopeful escapists that are filled with thoughts of, it's just a matter of time. And once you do finally escape, you can leave all your troubles and forget your past. Really not a bad song at all, and not surprising that it was popular as well at the time. But it's impossible not to compare it with the Radiohead track, No Surprises. It was a song that was recorded about the same time as this one, but wasn't released until many months afterwards, so there's almost no way it could have been the inspiration. But the similarities are totally undeniable. After you finish listening to this album, play No Surprises right after it, and then play Beck's Odelay. It flows pretty nicely. This album is brimming with potential, but lacks an overarching vision and maybe a more distinct sound. It's engineered nearly as well as Sponge's Rotting Pinata that I reviewed a few weeks back, but ends up just being a reasonable send-off for the tumultuous timeline of the band Junkhouse. I'll definitely consider keeping it for now and see if it grows on me a little more. Hell, this was worth me picking up just for the brief yet interesting look into some cool Canadian rock from the 90s. I hope you can find a track or two you can enjoy off this one, and maybe you can stick with me and keep stumbling to more music together. Subscribe over here, you know the thing. Like the video, share it with your friends, comments are great. I love you all. You're the reason I get out of bed in the morning.